Hello again. Welcome back to our science sip. It's been a minute.
Welcome.
Yeah, I haven't done this in a few weeks.
No, we've needed a break.
Well, we took a vacation.
Sinus infection.
I'll also talk about vacation, but if you'd rather talk about a sinus infection, that's on you. So today we're not having a cocktail. Today we're having tea.
Herbal tea.
Because we're both feeling a bit under the weather still. There's a lot of lovely respiratory infections going around.
Even in Greece.
Especially we have a kiddo in school. But we're excited about the science we found this week. We wanted to share.
Yes, we are.
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. There was an article on the CNN.com, I was on the international edition, about a company that wants to net zero your airline fuel. So so I think this was driven by a Washington Post article about how there's been recent greenwashing from companies like Delta and others about how they're saying they're offsetting the carbon, but
did you see the report of how many private airlines went to the COP27 conference?
No.
It's pretty damaging.
Well, there you go. Those reports and the news about that has made people wonder, are there better ways than just fun emails that quote support this or purport to improve climate? And so there have been companies that have been since I think 2016, and then there was a recent updates in 2019 from MIT about pulling CO2 straight from the air.
Oh wow!
And so
that sounds very sci-fi.
Yeah, and so it's really cool. There's this company in Denmark, and they've made they're called Climeworks, and they do a solid container. It looks like basically a canister that CO2 is attracted to it, and then it's held in suspension.
Okay.
And then you heat it up, and the CO2 is removed. So what they do is they simply take that CO2, use it to then bubble up water, and then shove the water underground, and that's how they sequester the CO2 by creating fizzy water.
Fizzy water. So here's the question though. If you sequester all that fizzy water underground and you have an earthquake, does it explode like a shaken up soda bottle?
Well, I think what happens is kind of like what we've dealt with fracking.
Yeah.
Is the earth is very porous, and that CO2 ends up getting trapped into a lot of other structures in the earth. I mean, when you think of limestone, for example, enormous amount of CO2 is sequestered in just good old-fashioned limestone, which is one of the reasons why concrete is so bad for the environment, because you bake limestone to get the lime out, which means you release so many tons of CO2 per pound of concrete. In any case, there's one other company, and this is where I'll end, that said that they signed a deal with the Air Force to make jet fuel using the same technology. So what they do is, instead of making fizzy water to put underground, they instead take the CO2 and they recombine it with hydrogen. And the combination of CO2 and H2 allows you then to create those polymer bonds and those polymer groups, like the COHs and all those alcohols that can be part of a fuel. So you can make a synthetic fuel, like a jet fuel. They also have vodka and a perfume.
Interesting.
So all of that from Zero Air, and if you go on their website, they'll happily sell you the perfume. I'd actually be fun to try the vodka.
Would be interesting.
Maybe for our next science.
Yeah, maybe we'll run
Zero Air, send us a bottle of vodka and we'll put it on science.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Okay.
Well, something caught my eye as I was going to my usual place, the AAAS Eureka Alert, to look at the scientific press releases. And so a press release from a few days ago is talking about molecular fingerprinting in pearl oysters. Now, I know we both really enjoyed the episode we did on pearls.
We did. We learned a lot about pearls.
And I just started listening to a new podcast where they interviewed someone from Mikimoto Pearls about the pearl industry. It's really kind of all coming together this week.
I'd love to see a link to that.
So pearls are a huge industry in Japan, cultured pearls. And they have been dropping, the export potential of the cultured pearls. So Japan went from exporting 70,000 kilograms or producing 70,000 kilograms of cultured pearls about 20 years ago to 20,000 kilograms today.
That's an enormous drop.
It's an enormous drop. And it has to do with disease and things like red tides in the oysters. So researchers at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, along with some partners, including Mikimoto, so they published high-quality chromosome-scale genome from pearl oysters in hopes of finding resilient strains of oysters that could be used. So oysters have 14 pairs of chromosomes, one set from each parent, kind of like humans, except humans have 26. And usually when you do this type of sequencing in the lab with laboratory animals, you would merge the pairs of chromosomes in the data. Because laboratory animals, the chromosomes will be identical, right? But these aren't laboratory animals, these are wild oysters. And so they actually did not merge the chromosome pairs because they wanted to find gene variants that were different between the two chromosome pairs. And they did find key differences between the chromosomes on chromosome 9, which is where a lot of the immunity disease genes are.
Oh, interesting.
And they said that it could be because, well, it could add benefit to the oyster to have variation there, because then you'll be able to have your immune system recognize more types of diseases. And so they think this is really important for breeding, especially. So these cultured oysters, for cultured pearls, are bred. And they're inbred, right? Because you select for the oysters that are making the best pearls.
Yeah.
But after about three cycles of inbreeding, you start losing variation in those immunity genes.
So the pearl, as you inbreed, you have less healthy populations.
Yeah. And so they say the idea is that having this genetic information can allow sort of smarter breeding of pearl oysters, so that you're picking for oysters that have the best characteristics, but also making sure you don't lose the genetic diversity of your oyster population. And what I thought was also interesting is that I was not aware of this until recently, but cultured pearls were first developed 130 years ago by Mikimoto.
Oh wow! So they're the authors of this technology.
Well, so it was a person, an individual, Kokichi Mikimoto, and apparently he was seeing how many foreigners were coming to Japan for natural pearls. And he was also seeing that market at some point would get saturated because there's only so many pearl divers.
Yeah.
But he was seeing this huge demand. So he spent 20 years of his life and almost went into bankruptcy to figure out how to culture a pearl. And he did it.
That's really sticking to it.
Yeah, and they are today the second most exported marine product produced in Japan.
Wow.
After scallops.
That's huge, and given how big seafood is in Japan, that's a big statement.
Oh, exported. I mean, it's not different. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was really fascinating. Another case of DNA sequencing providing some benefit.
Well, even better than that, I mean, you could even say, in this case, here's a situation where genetically DNA sequencing, and some people like to combine that with GMO, right, which is a bad thing. But in this case, what we're seeing is we're using DNA to actually make for healthier and more diverse species.
Right, so you're not modifying the genetics of the organism in a lab. You are using the information you have about their genetic structures to breed them more responsibly.
Well, there you go. It's a great example of a combination of great science and great animal husbandry.
Yes, agreed. And then beautiful pearls.
It can be done.
It's done all the time. Anyway, we hope that you enjoyed our little science snippets today and that you all have a happy and healthy weekend.
Thanks.
I'll see you next week.